When my own family looked at my 5-year-old daughter and said, "We have no space for her," right in front of her face, something inside me shattered in a way I can't even describe. You know when a moment burns itself into your memory so deeply that no amount of time or forgiveness can erase it. That was mine. I can still see the way my little girl's eyes darted from me to them, confusion and sadness swirling together like she was trying to understand what she had done wrong. And I remember thinking, how could my family, the people who raised me, look at an innocent child and reject her like that? Was I wrong for walking away from them after that day? Or was I right to finally choose my daughter over the people who were supposed to love us both? It started a few years ago, when everything in my life felt like it was falling apart. I was 26, recently divorced, and trying to raise my daughter, Mia, on my own. My ex-husband, Adam, was charming when we met, but once Mia was born, his patience disappeared. He didn't want to deal with sleepless nights, doctor's visits, or bills. He wanted freedom, so one day, after another argument about money, he told me he needed space, and packed his bags. That space turned into months, and those months turned into divorce papers that I eventually signed just to have peace. I thought my family would be my safety net. My parents had always said, "No matter what happens, we'll be here for you." But the truth is, they loved the idea of being grandparents more than the reality of it. When Mia was a baby, they would show her off to their friends, but they never offered to babysit or help when I was exhausted. My mom would say, "You chose to have her, so you have to handle it." Still, I convinced myself they loved us. That belief kept me sane when everything else fell apart. After the divorce, I couldn't afford rent anymore. I worked part-time at a grocery store, picking up every extra shift I could, but it wasn't enough. I swallowed my pride and called my parents. I asked if Mia and I could stay with them for a few months while I got back on my feet. I expected a pause, maybe some questions, but instead there was silence. My mom finally said, "We'll have to think about it." That hurt, but what came next hurt more. A week later, I got a call from my younger sister, Emily. She said, "Mom and Dad said you can stay for a bit, but it's going to be tight. You know they're redoing the guest room for me and Tyler." Tyler was her fiancé, and they were planning their wedding. I didn't want to be a burden, so I said we'd stay in the living room if we had to, anything to give me a stability. When we finally arrived, it was clear we weren't welcome. My mom greeted us with a stiff hug, my dad avoided eye contact, and Emily made a comment about how much stuff I had. I tried to smile through it. I kept telling Mia, "We're just visiting Grandma and Grandpa for a while." Isn't that exciting? I wanted her to feel safe, even if I didn't. The first night, we slept on an air mattress in the corner of the living room. Mia didn't mind. She thought it was like camping. She giggled as we set up her little blanket and stuffed bunny, but I couldn't sleep. I could hear my parents whispering in their room, their voices sharp and irritated. The next morning, my mom told me to keep me quiet because Dad needed rest. I apologized and promised to be careful. I was walking on eggshells in my own childhood home. Days turned into weeks. I cleaned, cooked, and did everything I could to help. But no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. My mom would complain about me leaving toys around, even though they were neatly stacked in a basket. My dad sighed every time she laughed too loud. Emily would roll her eyes and say things like, "You know, maybe you should find a place sooner rather than later." I bit my tongue because I needed a roof over our heads. Then one Saturday morning it all exploded. Emily and her fiancé were over, planning wedding details in the kitchen. Mia and I were in the living room, coloring quietly. My mom came in and said, "We need to talk." Her tone made my stomach drop. I told Mia to keep coloring while I went into the kitchen. My dad, Mom, Emily, and Tyler were all sitting there. The air felt heavy. My mom started, "We've been talking, and we just can't keep doing this." I asked what she meant. She said, "It's not working, having you both here. There's just no space." I reminded her that I was looking for a place and that I'd been saving up. I just needed a few more weeks, but she shook her head. It's not just that. She said, it's Mia. She's too much. She's loud, she's messy, and your father can't handle the noise. I froze. My daughter was 5 years old. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just being a kid. I started to speak, but then my dad said something that made my blood run cold. We didn't sign up to raise another kid. He muttered, we raised ours, we deserve peace now. And that's when it happened. Mia walked into the kitchen, holding her drawing a little picture of all of us smiling together. She must have heard her name. She looked up at my mom and said, Grandma, I made this for you. My mom hesitated, took the paper awkwardly, and forced a smile. But then Emily laughed softly and said, we literally just said we have no space for her, and now she's standing right here. You could have heard a pin drop. Mia's face changed. She looked up at me, then back at them. No space for me. She whispered. Her voice was so small, but it hit me like a punch to the chest. I knelt down and pulled her close, but she pushed away gently and looked at my mom again. I can be small, she said. I can make space. That broke me. My mother looked away, embarrassed, but she didn't say a word, not one word to comfort her granddaughter. I stood up, shaking. We'll leave, I said quietly. My mom tried to protest, saying, don't be dramatic. But it was too late. I packed our things in silence. Mia didn't say a word either. She just held her bunny and watched as I shoved our clothes into a trash bag. We left that house and went to a cheap motel on the edge of town. It wasn't safe, and it wasn't clean, but it was ours. That night, as Mia fell asleep beside me, I cried. I cried because my parents had chosen comfort over compassion, and I cried because my little girl had to hear those words. We have no space for her. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and think. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have forgiven your family for saying something so cruel to your child, or would you have cut them off completely? Let me know in the comments what you think, because this next part, it changed everything. After that night, something inside me hardened. I stopped waiting for anyone to save me. I picked up extra shifts, called every apartment listing I could find, and within a month, I found a tiny studio we could afford. It wasn't much, but it had a lock on the door and a little window that let in the morning sun. Mia loved it. She called it our happy house. I thought cutting contact with my parents would bring peace, but of course, Emily couldn't let it go. She called me one evening, furious, Mom's upset. She says you embarrassed her by storming out like that. I laughed bitterly. She embarrassed herself. I replied, you don't tell a 5-year-old there's no space for her. Emily rolled her eyes. You're so sensitive. You know they didn't mean it like that. But they did, and the fact that she couldn't see it only proved how blind they all were. Months went by, and life started to stabilize. Mia started kindergarten, made friends, and began smiling again. I started feeling human again. Then one afternoon I got a call from my mom. Her voice was shaky. Your father's been in an accident, she said. My heart stopped. I didn't even think. I just asked where he was. We rushed to the hospital. When we got there, my dad was sitting up, bruised but alive. He'd been in a car accident, but it wasn't life. Threatening. My mom hugged me, crying, and for a second, I almost forgot everything. Almost, then she looked down at Mia, who was holding my hand, and said, "Oh, you brought her." Like she was a guest, not family. That was the moment I realized nothing would ever change. Even near tragedy, my mother couldn't see my daughter as part of us. She was an inconvenience, an extra body in their perfect little world. I stayed polite, helped with hospital paperwork, and then left. My mom called a few days later, asking if I could come help around the house while Dad recovered. I said no. She was stunned. "You're really going to hold a grudge over one comment?" she asked. I said, "No, Mom. I'm protecting my child from people who make her feel unwanted." From that day on, I stopped answering their calls. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped giving them chances to hurt us again. Emily sent me angry texts about how family is everything. But to me, family isn't blood, it's love. And they had shown me exactly how much love they were capable of. Years passed. Mia grew up into the most beautiful, kind-hearted kid. She's 10 now, and she barely remembers that day, but I do. Sometimes she asks why we don't visit Grandma and Grandpa anymore, and I tell her the truth in gentle words. Because they forgot how to make space for us, I say, and she just nods as if that makes perfect sense. But one day, something unexpected happened. I got a letter in the mail, from my mom. It wasn't long, just a few pages, written in shaky handwriting. She said she was sorry. She said she missed us. She said she hadn't realized how much damage her words had done until she heard Mia's voice in her head one night, saying, "I can be small." She wrote that those words haunted her. She wanted to meet, to apologize in person. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to throw the letter away, but another part of me, the daughter part, wanted to believe she had changed. So I agreed to meet her. We met at a small cafe. She looked older, smaller somehow. When she saw Mia, she started crying. "You've grown so much," she said softly. Mia smiled politely but stayed close to me. My mom looked at me and said, "I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to be better." I wanted to believe her. I really did, so I told her, if you want a relationship with us, it has to start with her. You need to show her that she matters. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. It's been 2 years since that meeting. My mom has been slowly trying to rebuild trust. She visits occasionally, calls Mia on her birthday, and asks about school. It's awkward sometimes, but it's progress. My dad, on the other hand, still doesn't reach out, and honestly, that's fine. I've stopped expecting anything from him. Looking back, I realize that day in the kitchen was both the worst and best day of my life. It broke something inside me, but it also forced me to become stronger. It showed me who truly cared, and it taught me that being a mother means standing up for your child, even when it means standing alone. So if you've ever been in a situation where your family made you feel like you or your child didn't belong, please know this: you deserve better. You deserve people who make space for you, no matter how small that space might be. Like this video if you were on my side, and tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven them, or would you have walked away for good? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, I have plenty more to share. I'll see you all in the next story.